Okay, so we're going to look at question 2. The director would like to know how many of the total sales were handheld devices. Calculate the fraction of sales that all handheld devices represent. Here it says that handheld is tablets, smartphones, and half the gaming consoles. We can see that tablets are 3/16 of the total sales, and smartphones are 1/4. Half of the games consoles, I'm just going to highlight it there, but we're not going to deal with that right now. We're just going to look at adding the 1/4 of smartphones and the 3/16 of tablets. So what we have to do that is we have to get the 1/4 of tablets and the 3/16 and add them. However, we can see that the denominators are both different, and we cannot add fractions without having a common denominator, so the denominator that has the same number. We can look at how we got our 1/4 to equal 16ths, and that was that we knew 4 times 4 was 16. So what we do to the bottom, we also always do to the top, and that gives us 4/16. We then have a look and add our 4/16 to our 3/16. And when adding fractions with a common denominator, so the same number at the bottom there, you just need to add the numerator. So you've got your 7/16. Now we've added those, we can start looking at our half of our games consoles. Our games consoles are 8/32. So let's have a look at what we can do. Well, we know half is the same as dividing by 2. So let's pop that up there and look at how we can divide by 2. So let's turn our whole number into an improper fraction. So 2/1 shows you that it's an improper fraction representing 2 whole. And we know that dividing fractions is the same as multiplying by the reverse. So can you see that I've flipped the 2 has now travelled all the way to the bottom and the 1 to the top, and I can just multiply that together. So 8/32 times 1/2. I multiply the numerators. 8 times 1 is 8, and 32 times 2 is 64. So we now have 7/16 to add 8/64. Adding fractions again, we need to make sure that we have a common denominator. Here, by finding factors, I can see that 64 is the same as 2 times 32. If you see 64 divided by 2 will give you 32, and 64 divided by 32 will give you 2. So now we've got to 32, I also know that 16 times 2 is 32. So let's put that in and sum. So I've got 16 times 2 equals 32. And what we do to the denominator, we do to the numerator. So I have now 14 over 32. And with my 8 over 64, I'm going to extend my fraction. And I know that if I divide 64 by 2, I will get 32. And if I divide my denominator by 2, I also divide my numerator by 2. And I will get 4 over 32. I can then add my fractions. And when adding with the same denominator, your denominator does not change. You're just adding the numerators. So now we've got 18 over 32. That is the total sales of, that is the fraction of the total sales of those different devices added together. The tablets, the smartphones, and half of the games consoles. We can have a look to see whether we can reduce that fraction to a simpler form by factorising it. So we know that it's 2 times 16, and 16 is 2 times 8. And we know that 18 is 2 times 9. So here you can see that both the denominator and the numerator can be divided by 2. So we can simplify it. So here we have 2 times 9 and 2 times 16, which is the same as 18 over 32. And here you can see that actually we can just cancel out the 2's, because 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we have 9/16. So if we go back to our question, we can enter 9/16 into our answer for question 2.